It always started the same way. A message in the dead of night. Mobile phone with arrow come over. Now, I need you. The words lit up my screen, sharp against the darkness of my room. I stared at them, feeling that familiar, twisted mix of adrenaline and guilt burn in my chest. I should have ignored it. I should have turned off my phone, rolled over, and forgotten she ever existed. But I didn't, because when she called, I always came. I used to think it was about her wanting me. Now I wasn't so sure. Something about this time felt off. There was no hesitation in her words. No urgency. No guilt. Not like before. It was almost like she didn't care. Didn't care if we got caught. Didn't care what would happen if her husband found out. Didn't care what would happen to me. I felt my fingers hover over the keyboard. Something deep in my gut, a warning, a whisper of doubt, told me to stop, to finally say no, to break whatever spell she had over me before it was too late. But then I imagined her, alone in that big, empty house, draped in silk, waiting. I imagined the way she would pull me inside, breathless, her nails dragging down my chest. And just like that, I was already gone. I typed back 2 words, mobile phone with arrow, on my way. I threw on a hoodie, grabbed my keys, and slipped out into the night, my heart pounding a little harder than usual. This time felt different. I just didn't know why yet. The night was thick with silence, the kind that made every sound feel louder. I parked 2 blocks away, just like I always did, far enough that no passing neighbor would see my car, but close enough that I could make a quick getaway if I had to. The engine ticked as it cooled, the street empty except for the occasional flicker of a porch light in the distance. I shouldn't be here. The thought echoed in my head, loud and clear. But my hands were already on the steering wheel, my breath already uneven. I checked my phone. No new messages. She hadn't followed up. No, Hetty. No. Where are you? No. I need you now. Just that single text. Mobile phone with arrow come over. Now. I need you. A single demand. A single command. And I had obeyed. I stepped out of the car, shutting the door without a sound. The night air was cool against my skin as I moved toward the house, my heart beating just a little too fast. I slipped through the back entrance the way I always did. The key was already waiting under the flower pot, like it had been left there just for me, like she knew I wouldn't say no. I turned the handle and stepped inside, shutting the door behind me. That's when I noticed it, the silence. Not the usual nervous, hurried kind of silence. Not the guilty kind of silence. Not the kind that made you rush into someone's arms, desperate for a taste of something forbidden. This was something else, something deeper. The air in the house felt heavier, like it had been waiting for me. A faint scent of vanilla and red wine lingered in the air. The kitchen lights were dim, casting long, unmoving shadows against the walls. Something about this moment felt too perfect, like I was meant to walk into it. And then I saw her, standing at the bottom of the stairs, waiting. Her silk robe barely clung to her frame, one strap slipping off her shoulder. The fabric shimmered under the soft glow of the chandelier, a teasing whisper of curves and bare skin. A wine glass dangled from her fingers, the deep red liquid swirling lazily inside. But it wasn't her robe. It wasn't the way her lips parted, or the way the light caught the smirk in her eyes. It was the way she looked at me, not like a woman afraid of getting caught, not like someone sneaking around. She looked at me like she had been expecting me, like she had been waiting, like she was daring me. Her smile deepened as she took a slow sip of wine. Then she spoke. "Took you long enough." Her voice was smooth, low, unbothered, like she already knew exactly how this night was going to end. And for the first time since I walked through that door, I felt a shiver crawl down my spine, because for the first time, I wasn't sure if I had walked into her arms, or into a trap. The second I stepped toward her, she didn't hesitate. She didn't flinch, Didn't check the door. Didn't look over her shoulder, like she usually did, scanning for the sound of an approaching car or the sudden vibration of her husband's text message. No, she just stood there, waiting, daring me. And when I reached for her, gripping her waist, pulling her flush against me, she let out the softest, most satisfied sigh. Like this was exactly where she wanted me. "You're insane," I whispered, my fingers digging into the silk that barely covered her skin. She only smirked, tilting her chin up, her eyes locking onto mine with that same reckless fire that had drawn me into her trap months ago. "That's why you like me." And then she kissed me. Hard. Without hesitation. Without fear. Without guilt. It was desperate. Not in the way of someone afraid of getting caught, but in the way of someone who didn't care if they did. The way her lips moved against mine. The way she claimed me. It sent a chill down my spine. Something about this moment felt different. There was no rush. No frantic, stolen seconds. No sense of urgency, like we were sneaking through borrowed time. Because she wasn't sneaking. Not anymore. She wasn't afraid. At all. My hands ran up her back, her skin impossibly warm under my touch, but my mind was spinning. Why? Why wasn't she checking her phone? Why wasn't she listening for sounds outside? Why wasn't she nervous like every other time? I pulled back slightly, just enough to study her face. Her lips were swollen, her breath warm against my skin. But her eyes were steady. Too steady. A slow smile curved her lips, like she knew exactly what I was thinking. Like she had been waiting for me to figure it out. The realization hit me like a cold wave crashing over my body. This wasn't an affair. This was a game. And the worst part? I wasn't sure if I was the one playing, or if I was the prize. The air in the room was thick, too thick. Her breath was still warm against my lips, her fingers still trailing down my chest in slow, lazy circles. Like she had all the time in the world. Like she was completely at ease. Like she wasn't expecting anyone to walk through that door and ruin everything. And then, thud, a deep, heavy sound from upstairs. Not a house-settling creak. Not the wind rattling a window. Something solid. Something deliberate. I froze. Every muscle in my body went rigid, my breath halting in my throat. Someone was up there. My brain started working too fast, processing scenarios, calculating outcomes. Did he come home early? Did she lie to me? Did I just walk into my own death sentence? I'd barely had time to react before. Another sound, louder this time. Footsteps, moving, slowly. I swallowed hard, feeling the blood drain from my face. My grip on her waist tightened as I whispered, "What the hell was that?" She didn't even turn her head, didn't flinch, didn't freeze the way I had, like she already knew, like she had been expecting it. Instead, she smiled a slow, knowing smile. Her eyes never left mine as she ran a delicate finger down my chest, her touch feather-light, teasing. Too calm, too controlled. Then she leaned in, lips grazing my ear, and whispered, "Relax, it's not what you think." A chill shot through me, every nerve in my body screaming at me to get out. But I didn't move. I couldn't, because deep down, I knew. This was the moment I should have walked away. But I didn't, and that's exactly what she wanted. The sound of footsteps echoed through the upstairs hallway. Slow, deliberate. Each step landed with calculated weight, sending vibrations through the floorboards. Whoever it was, they weren't rushing. They weren't sneaking. They wanted to be heard. My pulse slammed against my ribs. She didn't move, didn't stiffen, didn't pull away from me like someone who had just been caught. Instead, she took a slow sip of wine, her eyes locked onto mine, like she was enjoying my reaction, like she was waiting for me to figure it out. Then, he appeared, a shadow first, stretching long against the dim hallway light. Then a figure, tall, confident, broad shoulders. His presence filled the doorway before I could fully process it. He wasn't rushing in, fists clenched, ready for a fight. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't even angry. He was smiling. And somehow, that was so much worse. The man stopped a few feet away, hands in his pockets, head slightly tilted like he was studying me. Like he was amused. Like he'd been watching us. Like he had been waiting for this moment. A sick feeling twisted in my gut. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what the hell was happening. Was this her husband? A friend? Someone who was about to kill me? I took a step back, my throat tightening. Who the hell is this? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she swirled the wine in her glass, letting the deep red liquid catch the light before finally lifting her gaze to mine. Then she smirked. Meet Jake. She took another sip. He knows everything. Everything. The word ripped through me like ice water down my spine. Jake let out a small chuckle, shaking his head as he took a step forward. Damn, he mused, his voice smooth. You should see your face right now. I swallowed hard, my brain still struggling to catch up. She wasn't panicking. He wasn't furious. Nobody was shocked. Nobody was acting like this was a mistake. Because it wasn't. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't two lovers getting caught in the act. This was something else. Something planned. And I was the only one in the room who hadn't known it. My stomach dropped. Not the kind of drop you feel when you're caught doing something you shouldn't. No. This was worse. A cold, creeping realization that wrapped itself around my spine and squeezed. Jake didn't look angry. Didn't look shocked. Didn't even look betrayed. He looked entertained. Like this was funny. Like this was a show. And I had just walked into the final act without reading the script. I took a step back, the room suddenly feeling too small. Jake tilted his head slightly, his smirk deepening as he let out a soft chuckle. So, you're the one. His voice was smooth, amused, almost impressed. Like he was meeting someone important. Like I was part of something I didn't even realize I had joined. I turned to her, desperate for an explanation. For something, anything, that made sense. Her lips curled, her fingers trailing lazily around the rim of her wine glass. She didn't look worried. Didn't look like a woman caught in the middle of something dangerous. She looked pleased. She took another slow sip of wine, swallowed, then shrugged. You thought we were sneaking around? Her voice was light, playful. Like this was some harmless joke. Like the months of stolen moments, secret messages, whispered promises. Me risking everything had been nothing more than a game. My jaw clenched. What the hell is this? She smirked, and then she said the words that froze my blood. No, baby. Her smile widened, her eyes dark with something I couldn't place. You were part of the plan. A chill crawled up my spine. The walls of the house seemed to close in. Every memory, every night, every risk, every moment I thought was mine alone. It was never mine. I was never in control. I was never choosing her. She had been choosing me. And I had been too blind, too caught up in the thrill, to see what was right in front of me. Jake sighed, shaking his head with mock sympathy. Dumb, man. That's rough. I looked at him, then at her. Jake, her husband, the man she had never been afraid of, because he had known, because he had always known. A sharp, cold realization stabbed through me. I was never the secret. I was the experiment, the next in whatever game they were playing. I had thought I was walking into something dangerous, thrilling, forbidden, but the real danger wasn't me getting caught. It was me thinking I had a choice. And now, I wasn't sure if I'd be walking out at all. The room felt colder, the air thicker. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, drowning out the silence that stretched between us like a noose tightening around my throat. And then Jake moved, casually, slowly, like he had all the time in the world, like he wasn't just about to turn my entire reality upside down. His fingers slipped into his pocket, retrieving something small, black, and sleek. A phone. Nothing special. But the way he held it like a weapon made my stomach churn. I watched as he tapped the screen. A few swipes, a few clicks, deliberate, calm, controlled. Then, without a word, he turned it toward me, and my blood ran cold. A video. A familiar video. The resolution was sharp, crystal clear. It started with a shadow slipping through the backyard. Then me, sneaking into this house, closing the door behind me, touching her, kissing her. I staggered back. Every moment I thought was secret wasn't. They had been filming me. My stomach twisted, my vision blurring. My first instinct was denial. No, this isn't real. I forced myself to look closer, hoping, praying for some kind of glitch, some kind of proof that this was fake. But it wasn't. The angle, the lighting, the movements, it was real. Every single second. Captured. Saved. Jake tilted his head, watching me with amusement. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. How long had this been going on? How many nights? How many cameras? I swallowed hard, forcing words out of my dry throat. What the hell is this? Jake smirked. What does it look like? My eyes darted to her. She was still standing there, still holding her wine glass, still looking at me like I was some fascinating little toy she had grown tired of playing with. She wasn't surprised. She wasn't panicked. Because she had known. She had always known. Why? My voice barely came out. She took a slow sip of wine, her eyes never leaving mine. Because, baby, she said, tilting her head, some things are more fun when you know someone's watching. My chest tightened. This wasn't just an affair. This was a game, and I was never in on it. I was just a pawn, a plaything, a willing fool in a trap I didn't even see closing around me. And the worst part? I had walked right into it. Jake leaned against the wall, his body completely at ease, like this was just another casual night in. Like I wasn't standing there, trapped in their twisted little world, my heart pounding so hard I could barely hear anything else. His arms crossed over his broad chest, the dim light casting sharp shadows across his face. And then, with a smirk, he said it. She likes danger. His voice was low, deliberate. I swallowed, my mouth suddenly dry. What the hell was happening? I turned to her, searching her face, looking for something, anything, that made sense. But she was unreadable. No vid, no panique, no hesitation. She just stood there, watching me like she was waiting to see how I'd react. Jake exhaled slowly, shaking his head, eyes dark with something I couldn't place. She likes control. My skin prickled. That wasn't news. I had felt it in the way she pulled me in, the way she whispered things that made me ignore every red flag. But this wasn't just about her controlling me. This was something bigger, something worse. Jake tilted his head slightly, his smirk widening. And now, he let the words hang there for a moment, savoring the tension, watching my every move like a predator, sizing up his prey. Then he delivered the final blow. We have you. My chest tightened. I felt my body instinctively shift, like every muscle was gearing up to fight or run. Except I didn't know where to go. The door was behind them. The windows, locked. I was standing in the middle of their game, and I had no idea how to play. I forced myself to speak, my voice strained. What the hell do you want from me? She finally moved, setting down her wine glass with perfect precision, the deep red liquid swirling inside like blood. Then she stepped closer, slow, measured, like she was savoring every second. Her fingertips brushed along my jawline, her nails dragging lightly over my skin. A slow, teasing smile curled her lips. We want to see, she whispered, leaning in so close I could feel her breath. Her lips brushed against my ear. How far you're willing to go? A shiver crawled down my spine. This wasn't about love. This wasn't about lust. This was about power. and I had just stepped into something far more dangerous than I had ever imagined. And the worst part? I wasn't sure if I wanted to leave. My mind was racing. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run. To get the hell out of this house, away from them, away from whatever sick game I had just been dragged into. But I didn't move. Not yet. I forced my breathing to slow, to mask the terror clawing at my chest. I needed to think. I needed to be smart. My fingers inched toward my pocket, slowly, carefully. Don't let them see. I slid my hand inside, feeling the familiar weight of my phone. My thumb moved blindly, unlocking it by muscle memory. Mobile phone with arrow, new message, Detective Carter. I typed fast, my heart slamming against my ribs. I need help. Now. The message sent. No read receipt. No response. Come on, Carter. I pulled my hand back, making sure to keep my face neutral. Jake was still leaning against the wall, watching me with pure amusement. He knew. He knew exactly what was going through my head. And the worst part? He was enjoying it. His lips curled into that same infuriating smirk. You could leave, he said, nodding toward the front door. My muscles tensed. The door. Locked. Of course it was locked. But locks can be broken. Jake's gaze flicked to me, his eyes glinting with something dark. Or, he continued, you could stay and see what happens next. A chill crawled up my spine. I clenched my jaw, my fists curling at my sides. Screw you. And then, I moved. Fast. I lunged for the door, every muscle firing at once. But she was faster. Too fast. Before I could even reach the handle, she stepped in front of me, smooth as silk, placing a delicate hand on my chest. Her touch was light, soft, but the weight of it? A barrier, a command, a warning. I stopped cold, my breath uneven. She tilted her head, her lips curling into a knowing smile. Leaving so soon, she purred. Her voice was smooth, teasing, like I was a misbehaving guest at some extravagant dinner party. Behind me, Jake chuckled, shaking his head. You're in this now, he murmured. His voice was low, almost pitying. Then he leaned in, his smirk widening. Might as well enjoy it. My blood turned to ice. My body screamed at me to push her aside, to run, to fight, to do something. But my feet didn't move. Because deep down, I realized something far more terrifying than the locked door, the cameras, or even their sick game. A part of me wanted to stay, and I had no idea why. Then, a knock at the door. Loud, demanding, unmistakable. Police! Open up! The words thundered through the house, echoing off the walls like a gunshot. My heart nearly stopped. For the first time tonight, Jake's smirk faltered. Just for a second. Just a flicker. But it was enough. I took my chance. With everything I had left, I shoved her aside, feeling her stumble back as I lunged for the door. My fingers wrapped around the handle. I yanked it open hard, and there he was, Detective Carter. His face was stone, cold, sharp, deadly serious. His gun was already raised, pointed right past me. At them. Step away from him. Now. For the first time since I had met her, since I had fallen for her, since I had let myself be pulled into this twisted nightmare. She looked surprised, not scared, not panicked, but caught off guard, like she hadn't expected me to make it this far. Jake sighed. Rubbing his temples like this was nothing more than a minor inconvenience. Then he chuckled, shaking his head. Damn, he muttered. Guess we'll have to play later. Like this was a game. Like I was still a piece on their board. Like they had never really lost control. I felt Carter's iron grip clamp around my arm, yanking me back, pulling me out of the house, into the cold night air. I didn't resist. I couldn't. I could barely breathe. Everything felt unreal. Like I had woken up from a dream that had lasted too long, turned too dark. But as I stumbled backward onto the pavement, my body still shaking, my lungs still gasping for air, I turned, and she was still there, standing just inside the doorway, bathed in the glow of the dim hallway light, watching me, not pleading, not apologizing, just watching. And then she smiled, that same wicked, knowing smile, the one that had started all of this, the one that had pulled me in from the very beginning. She tilted her head slightly, her voice smooth as silk. See you soon. A chill shot down my spine. Carter dragged me toward his car, his grip unrelenting. You have no idea how close you just came, he muttered under his breath. I barely heard him. My mind was racing, spinning, drowning in the realization that clawed its way through my gut. I had escaped, but somehow I knew this wasn't over, not even close, because a part of me, a small, twisted, treacherous part of me, was already wondering what would happen if I went back.